High school style. Montoya. Colonel Hayes.
Here.
Canfield.
He's over there.
6 back. Oh, come on.
About baseball. Needless to say, anything.
Former school circuit army, follow!
These fields on May 1st, 1941, hired by the U.S. government. All right? So you good to go?
Right, sir.
All right, let's form up and let's get after it.
Right, sir.
Right! Hey!
Now we're in front of Colonel Frank Getchie Memorial. Okay, he was a Marine, served in World War I and World War II. Okay, throughout his career and service in the Marine Corps, he was known for his abilities in football. Okay, he was actually indoctrinated into the Marine Corps Sports Hall of Fame class of 2001. All right, born and raised in Ohio. He played football for The Ohio State University, and he heard the call to serve during the start of World War I. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps May 22nd of 1917. Okay, I say again, he enlisted in the Marine Corps. Within 1 year, he served as the acting first sergeant for the USS Vermont. I say again, 1 year later, due to his education and superior leadership, he earned the title as a first sergeant and was then commissioned as second lieutenant in July of 1918. So about a year later, upon his enlistment in the United States Marine Corps, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant. All right, serving abroad throughout the world, football was still in his mindset and in his heart. He then served from 1921 to 1924 on the United States Marine Corps football team, earning them 40 victories and 2 ties. It was quoted by Walter Camp, a sports writer at the current time, that he was one of the greatest football players of that present day. He was in fact so good that several professional teams, Sergeant Major Hughes, I know you like this, but to include the New York Giants, here we go.
You said professional,
wanted to recruit him to actually play for that team. His service was not to go to play professional football, but in fact he stayed in the United States Marine Corps, serving, and in fact was one of the first Marines to step foot in Guadalcanal. All right. Now, unfortunately, Colonel Getchie was killed in action during a mission in Guadalcanal, as you can read here. That was said to they were led to believe that there was a group of Japanese soldiers that were ready to surrender. They had poor nutrition, they were without food, and they were weak. But due to the circumstances, unfortunately, noise discipline had a lot to do with it. They were bombarded, and Colonel Getchie was killed on that day, along with his entire group of Marines that were on that mission. Those bodies were never found. To this day, years later, of all the searches that went to Guadalcanal to look for these bodies, they were never found. The only things that were left from Colonel Geshe was his rank and insignia, and wristwatch that were taken from the body at that time before the Japanese soldiers could know that he was a commanding officer. This is one of the great Marines that have served in our Corps, and the reason being that this memorial is dedicated to him, not only for his service in sports and representing the United States Marine Corps in football, but as well as his service to this country. And his heroic actions that day earned him the Legion of Merit with Valor for those actions. As General Wiley had mentioned, was given an order by the Commandant to start the construction of our base here at Camp Lejeune. All right, he was one of the Marine Corps' first aviators, so that's very important. He served as the Quartermaster General of the Marine Corps from 1944 to 1955. For his service in establishing this base, he was awarded the Navy Distinguished Service Medal. General Liver's Edge participated in the 1920s Olympics. He was awarded a bronze medal for shot put, and he was awarded 2 Navy Crosses for his service in the Marine Corps. His first Navy Cross was awarded in 1943 during the New Georgia campaign. His second Navy Cross was awarded in 1945 for his actions in Iwo Jima, which led to the capture of Mount Suribachi. All right, this concludes my period of instruction on these 3 heroes aboard Camp Lejeune. Do I have any questions?
No, not the other one.
These are the 2 individuals here that those roads were named off of. Now, Julian C. Smith, General Smith was best known for commanding the 2nd Marine Division during the invasion of Tarawa. He served as the commander for the 2nd Marine Division from 1943 to 1944. Early on in his career, he commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant back in 1909, and he served expeditionary tours all across Central America. And in 1930, he was awarded the Navy Cross for conducting operations against armed bandits in the jungles of Nicaragua. He was known as a kind and gentle man who could impose discipline with an iron will when the situation called for it. And his Marines all knew him as someone who cared greatly for the welfare of his Marines no matter the situation. Fast forward to World War II, he served as an observer in London during the early days of the war, working for the Navy. Then he came back stateside and served as the commanding general for the Fleet Marine Force schools here across the river at Camp Lejeune. Following that, in 1943, he took command of the 2nd Marine Division. And that was just in time for the planning phase of the invasion of Tarawa. And so in true Marine Corps fashion, he found himself with very little resources, and he himself at that point actually had very little command experience in the Fleet Marine Corps. However, he was able to make success by trusting the strengths of his subordinates, by using meticulous planning, and developing new doctrine where that was necessary. It was under his leadership that the Marine Corps first pioneered the use of amphibious landing tracks at Tarawa. Now, in the early hours of that invasion, when communications were cut out, General Smith found himself unable to communicate with his men on the beach. So, at great risk to his own life, before the beachhead was secured, he actually went under heavy enemy fire and went to the beachhead, to the point of friction where the 2nd Marine Division was struggling the most in order to command and control his men from the beachhead. And for his actions there in Tarawa, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. And the citation noted his outstanding leadership, his superior planning, and his amazing courage during that day. When he retired in 1946, he noted that his command of the 2nd Marine Division and his actions at Tarawa were the pinnacle of his Marine Corps career. Moving on to General Holcomb here. General Holcomb was the 17th Commandant of the Marine Corps. He served from 1900 until 1944. And in the early days of his career, he also got around. He served in the North Atlantic with the Fleet Marine Force there. He served in the Philippines, and early in his career as a lieutenant, he was a member of the Marine Corps Rifle Team for several years. And he also pioneered the Marine Corps Marksmanship program later on in his career. He also spent a great deal of time in China. From 1905 to 1914, he served as an attaché to the embassy, the American Embassy in China. And there he actually mastered the Chinese language. Later on, he served as the battalion commander. Some of those awards included the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism, the Silver Star with 3 oak clusters and a Purple Heart. Following World War I, he became the 17th Commandant of the Marine Corps in 1936. And during that interwar period following World War I, leading up to World War II, he worked very hard to modernize the Marine Corps. And he updated our amphibious doctrine, and he did it with an eye toward the Pacific, seeing the potential conflict that might be coming there with Japan. And when World War I broke out, he continued to modernize that doctrine. And he was responsible for creating the modern relationship that we have between the Navy and the Marine Corps when we're conducting amphibious operations. During his 10 years as Commandant, the Marine Corps saw the incorporation of women into the Marine Corps in 1943. And then he retired in 1944 after 44 years of service. Both of these individuals led extremely broad careers, and they perfectly embodied the professionalism, the expeditionary spirit, and our warrior culture that we hold so dear in the Marine Corps. That's all I got, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
For those that don't know me, I'm Chief Warrant Officer Stewart. I'm at India Company, and I'm one of the OICs at your Corps Leading's IPAC. So, why are we at this point here? So, behind us right now is the command post for 8th Marine Headquarters, 8th Marine Regiment. But it wasn't always 8th Marines. Going back to World War II, as we learned at our last post, General Holcomb was part of the introduction of the Women Reserves. And July of 1942, what was going on in 1942?
War.
World War II. That was an all hands on deck. We had over 3 million at the time in the service, going up to 9 million in 1943. So the Congress passed a resolution that authorized the services to implement the Women's Reserves throughout the duration of the war, and then 6 months after that. So they kind of hesitated a little bit, and in March of 1943, the Marine Corps went ahead and they established the Women's Reserves, and they appointed commissioned Ruth Streeter, a major, to be the director of the Marine Corps Women's Reserves. So they started out, they had OCS for commissioning women at Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts. They kind of piggybacked off the Navy up there, and then enlisted Marines at the college in New York, Hunter College in New York. And a couple months later, they moved down here, and Building 123 became the headquarters Women's Marine Corps Reserve Schools. So they went through the training there over the course of the 3 years. They trained over 22,000 women to be in the Marine Corps. They served in over 200 MOSs, drivers, cooks, clerical work, telegraph operators. And the reason they did that was to free up the men at the time to go overseas and fight. As we learned at the first stop, Colonel Getchy, we were suffering a lot of losses, and casualties were high, and it was all hands on deck. The school here was commanded by Colonel Arthur, but the reserve, the director, was a major. She eventually became a full bird colonel. The reserves went up to 1943, and they were set to expire in September of 1943. And at the time, of the 22,000 that were trained here at Camp Lejeune, in Time magazine, basically saying they don't need a nickname. They train with the Marines at a Marine post. They inherit the traditions of the Corps. They are Marines. Right. They served in, like I said, they served in the 200 MOSs and performed as admirably and professionally as the men did. And in 1948, Congress went ahead and passed a resolution to augment women in the regular services. Right. That concludes my
Right here. Hurry up. Let's go. Let's go.
Good shot. Good shot, fellas. That's a good shot.
On each of you standing here today. He was born in 1884 in Pennsylvania and commissioned in the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant in 1908. The first action he saw was in Haiti, 1915 to 1918. He fought the insurgency right beside Major Smedley Butler. Major Smedley Butler actually taught him pretty much everything he knows about counterinsurgency, doing it there in Haiti. They were fighting against the Caicos rebels who were running amok all through Haiti, causing riots, attacking the government, assassinating leaders. So the Marine Corps was sent to protect American interests. They got there and they realized, hey, there's actually a German presence here as well, because what else is going on in 1915? World War I is ramping up, right? So they went there. Not only were they able to defeat the Caicos rebels, but they were able to suppress the German influence in Haiti that they were afraid was going to affect America later on. Moving on to 1922, now Major Marston was able to implement what he learned from Smedley Butler as a commander himself in the doing whatever they want overseas. Marines like to get in trouble overseas, right? So problem is they were getting in so much trouble they were being a detriment to the situation in Nicaragua. So Major Marston showed up, took command, and he taught them what he learned from Smedley Butler. He taught them how important it is to work with the culture and how your efforts and your effects can actually have issues for the country that lead back to America. So over his time there, after he took command, he was something the Nicaraguans hated. They hated America, they hated the Marine Corps. So by the time they left, they're actually in good standing. They didn't want us to go because we brought stability. We brought them what they needed to live their daily lives in peace. They were actually playing baseball together by the time they left, so pretty big turnaround, right? Fast forward to 1937. Now, Major Marston became the CO of the detachment in Peiping, China. His role there was to protect a multinational settlement that were there working and living from all over the world. Well, China and Japan, the aggressions between those two countries rolled the shipping lanes all over the Atlantic very easily. Problem is, Iceland has no military. They were defenseless. So originally the British asked Iceland, hey, let us protect you, let us occupy your land and keep you safe and keep the Germans out. Iceland said, no, we're neutral, we want nothing to do with you. So the Brits invaded Iceland and took it by force. Iceland wasn't real happy. After a little bit, they actually requested the United States take over for them because the British troops needed to be on the front line anyway. So Brigadier General Marston was sent to Iceland with the 1st Marine Brigade, took over, once again, worked his operational culture magic, ended up setting up all kinds of recreational activities with the Icelandic people, and by the time they left, they were awarded Iceland's patch for their security forces, their police forces. They all had this polar bear patch. So Iceland went from being an occupied territory against their will by the British to being friends of America, awarding us patches because of the way Brigadier General Marston handled that situation. Fast forward to 1942, he became the commanding general of the 2nd Marine Division, took them to New Zealand, and pretty much oversaw all the rest and recovery operations for World War II. All the soldiers, all the Marines, all the sailors in the Pacific would go to New Zealand and have a good time on their R&R. He was responsible for making sure it was done well, done safely, and we didn't cause too much trouble in New Zealand as well, all right? So, he held a few more billets, but what I promised you in the beginning was he had an effect on each and every one of you, right? In 1944, he became the commanding general of Camp Lejeune. Up until 1942, Lejeune was a training base. It was never meant to stick around. It was here to pump out Marines to the World War. It was going to go away after that. Well, in 1942, people realized, hey, this is an important place. We need to keep this capability. It's going to be a permanent base now. Well, when Major General Marston took over, he realized, okay, this is a training base. There's nothing for families. There's nothing to do here except train. I'm going to fix that. So he implemented all the changes you see here. Places we can have recreational activities, baseball fields, movie theaters, PXs, everything you do with your families for recreation so you can have some off time, you can enjoy yourselves. He implemented that. He implemented a base beautification process that made this place more than just a swamp. So years and years down the line, his efforts actually affect each and every one of you, and hopefully you enjoy your time here at Camp Lejeune a little bit more because of what he did for you. As a result, when he retired in 1946, Marston Pavilion was named after him as a thank you for all of his time and dedication to the United States Marine Corps. That's all I've got.
Support Camp Lejeune exemplified the highest levels of dedication for his strategic and campaign plans, outlined the way to enhance support for combat readiness, while continuing facility support, logistics support, information technology, command and staff support, and Marine family community support. Camp Lejeune partnered with the local community military planning group, which addressed issues of mutual sailors and civilian Marines aboard Marine Corps kit. Great Monday morning, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. Hey, first, let me thank everybody that helped put the historic hump together. All of our docents, if you will, those that explained a little bit of our history at each one of the stops. Thank you. Thank you for the excellent job this morning. Helping to recap the great work. Again, this was a awesome day. And this award, this meritorious unit achievement, is again another piece to the legacy that you all represent day in and day out, all right? So keep up the great work, keep advancing the legacy. Our civilian Marines that made it out today, I'm extremely proud of you. Thanks for coming out today. It was great seeing you in formation as well. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to turn you back over to the battalion commander to carry out the plan of the day, all right? Hoorah! Hoorah! Carry on.
Echo what the CG said, nice work, all right? Shows what we've been talking about. The battalion can get out there and do what everybody else can do, right? So I'm proud of you, good job. We're gonna turn to and head back in, get back to what we do, all right? Nice work. Again, proud of you for everything you did. Great weekend this weekend with no issues whatsoever. And